What will you do when your money works for you? Welcome to the Tech Girl Financial Podcast with your hosts, Victor and Kim Gaxiola. From the home office in California, here is Victor and Kim.
So today we have a very special podcast, Kim. We've got Nicole Bannon, who's joining us from 81 Cent. And she works as a coach, advocate, and advisor when it comes to assisting those people who are seeking new roles and responsibilities to negotiate a better offer and find a good fit when it comes to companies.
Yeah, this is going to be a great conversation to have. As the pace of the economy changes, we know there are still a lot of people in transition. Unfortunately, this time it may be because of a big layoff at a big technology company in our end. And so you may feel a little worried about what you're going to get and when you're going to get that next job. And that's never a good position to be when you are negotiating. So we're lucky to have Nicole here to talk to us about negotiating and how to do it right.
That's right. So I don't want to waste any time. Let's just get to the great content. Here is our interview with Nicole.
Welcome, Nicole. I am looking at your LinkedIn profile here and just blown away by your title, Negotiated 200 million plus in compensation for clients. That is excellent. Can you tell us a little how you got there?
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. So I actually started out in the recruiting industry after I graduated from Berkeley. I didn't know quite what I wanted to do. I just know I loved empowering people. I tutored and taught the SAT in college and tutored in high school. And I always found that I cared more about the person than a institution. And so after my first year of recruiting, I started coaching on the side because I was really motivated by people's responses to getting their dream job. And I would help them throughout the way to help them get over the finish line. So I coached on my own for a few years, but realized I really wanted to coach full time. So I have worked for large national, international agencies like Randstad, and I've worked at Salesforce and even at BART and University of California School of Business, Haas. And so I had a lot of different experience for recruiting and been a part of different industries. And in terms of now, what I do is I've been working at Rora, where we've been working with tech professionals, including STEM PhDs, entering industry for the first time. And even we acquired a business called 81 Cents, which strives to, the mission essentially is to help women and people of color advocate for themselves through education. And so in terms of how I got to the 200 million in increases, it's kind of in the sense of where I've worked one-on-one with folks and helped them when they would get an offer, take it all the way to the end. And I've seen sometimes increases of more than 100% because companies lowball, especially the big tech companies. So unfortunately, the reason for why the increases can be so large sometimes is because large conglomerates tend to take advantage of people. So I try to put the power in the hands back of the people. And so that's kind of my journey to where I am now.
Well, that's outstanding. And Nicole, when we had a conversation a couple months ago, and it was talking a little bit about how you do help empower people, especially when it comes to negotiating, because these roles that they're filling are highly specialized, and these people can be extremely brilliant in what they do, but they may not have, well, how should I say it, the negotiating skill set, to really value themselves and their self-worth. So tell us, how do you help them get better at negotiating and finding the right deal?
Yeah, so I think it starts ultimately with the mindset and education. So really, when people come to us to seek some sort of counsel, whether it's like they have an offer in hand or they've been laid off, they come in from different places. So for example, someone who's negotiated every time they've switched jobs is at a different starting point than someone who's never negotiated for themselves before. And so people have different lines of defense. They might have their friends and their family who, have done this before, but essentially everything is highly subjective and emotional when you're doing it for yourself. So I try to educate them on that objective help is extremely important. And in terms of mindset, like this market is not it's not the best for people right now to be making transitions. Some people don't have a choice because they've been laid off and have to look. And there's this additional pressure and feelings of desperation and a scarcity mindset that isn't as much there, if at all, during an up market, if someone's searching during an up market. So it starts with mindset and where they're coming from. And so I try to help them see what they have versus what they don't have. Like, what experience do they have? What can they do for the team that they're talking to? Where have they published their research papers, and not focus so much on that there's not as much headcount available as there was, or there's a lot of people looking right now, so there's more competition. So I try to focus on what they have, and that starts to shift their mindset to a place of abundance and sufficiency rather than deficiency.
So that's interesting. You've said so much there in that time period. One of the things I heard in in the introduction was just your idea that companies were lowballing a lot of the large organizations, which my clients will really perk up when they hear that because they want to know more about that. Has that changed in the past year? Because you've seen a lot go on from a standpoint of, we used to be in a situation where the employees were calling all the shots, and now it seems like it's definitely changed.
Yeah, it has shifted. And the thing is kind of, unfortunately, companies are like the house, of a casino, right? They're the ones who win every time, in the sense that they have the money, the resources, they have the experience, and especially with the big names, people want to work for them. So if you think about your best alternative to a negotiated agreement, or your BATNA, what that really means is your ability to walk away. What is your second choice? What is your third choice? And that's why they say job seekers are in a better position to get a job when you have a job. And it's not because necessarily you look more valuable to an employer, like optically. It's because you feel more valuable. You don't feel desperation. It's more of the psychology of what you feel. So in terms of, it's kind of back to the mindset thing, right? It is about what you can contribute. But in terms of, yes, unfortunately, these companies are still lowballing. The increases are still there. They're definitely still there, and we're seeing them, but it depends on how much leverage that you have. So back to the best alternative to negotiated agreement, like the more differentiated you are as a candidate, the more you find out your leverage as you're getting the offer, after you get the offer, you'll be able to assess fully how much room you have in negotiation. Because if you're their only choice, then to me, that shows that you have a lot more room. But if there's somebody else that they're considering, then you have to start assessing those types of points. But my point is that companies also have second, third, fourth choices, and the more space you can create between yourself and that second choice, you're in a lot better shape to ask for what you want and need.
Mm-hmm. And Nicole, earlier this year, I was actually attended the Morningstar conference, which is focused more, obviously, on financial services in the world that we live in. And I've been tracking other conferences in different industries, and it seems that AI is becoming a much bigger conversation piece, and in some cases, threat to job and job security. So when you're talking about companies having second or third potential choices, where does AI fit in this, and how are you helping the people that you work with, address that potential threat? Is it a threat?
Yeah, ironically, maybe a lot of our folks are in AI themselves. So meaning that they would be the ones programming the AI. So we've seen, sure, there's been a drop off in software engineers, maybe a need for them, or technical program managers and things like that. But the need for like machine learning researchers for self-driving cars, or like, large language models like ChatGPT, like that's because of OpenAI putting out that type of product. Now companies are scrambling to compete, and thus the people with that knowledge and skill set are not threatened. They're actually in a really great position to negotiate. And I'm working with someone right now who, we're asking for a 125% increase to Apple because one, Apple is just lowballs like that. Two, it's like because they don't have anyone else doing the type of work that he's done because he's gotten so specialized in his career. Mm-hmm. So in terms of other positions, maybe being quote unquote taken over by AI, it's hard to say for me to speak on that, but I will say that it is a growing area and it's going to become a more and more important. So any way you can get into that, whether it is in a startup that focuses on AI solutions, or even if you have nothing to do with programming, you have no technical experience, you might have more job security than someone who isn't in that space.
And so you mentioned the compensation, and we know that a part of the compensation, a big part of the compensation oftentimes is the RSU benefit. What are you seeing in terms of trends there?
Yeah. So for example, people's total compensation have dropped pretty significantly due to stock prices kind of tanking. And I just spoke with a woman at Amazon who's just sharing with me that she's outperformed. She started at the same time as her peer, and she outperformed him every year, and now is his supervisor, and he's her direct report. And because of her compensation package, it actually, a lot of it being equity, she had a pretty big decrease in her overall comp, and I've seen it like almost halved for people, like people making $2 million a year, making $950 now. But then she found out that he's actually making more than her, like $25K more, and is a level below her. And that made her pause and say, like, why is that? And there's reasons for that, but to me, it's because he negotiated his offer and she didn't. So he started out at a higher place, and that $5K difference in comp per year, that's a loss of hundreds of thousands of dollars cumulatively over your career lifespan. So just negotiating 5% better, it just adds up over time. So he just negotiated better than she did, and now she's trying to advocate for herself at the company. And so I don't know, that was a kind of a bit of a tangent, but that it made me think of. But yeah, I've seen comp drop pretty significantly for people who've been working at these companies for some time.
Wow. That's interesting. And also what I was interested in is what you said about looking at those that have negotiated versus those that haven't negotiated for their career, and to be in a place where somebody is underneath you in the levels, but is being paid more money. And I'm just curious, do you have that kind of research? I've been asked it on my end as well. Do you have the research to be able to say, to stretch that out over a lifetime? If you have not started negotiating from the first job you get, how behind are you in a 10, 20-year period?
Yeah, like dollars left on the table
Mm-hmm.
for lack of negotiation.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I can pull up a chart really quickly, and it shows it. Let me see. So if you start it's for negotiating a 5K increase in year one of your career, do a formula that we put in based off of what we've seen and experienced. At year one, you add 5K, and then it compounds over time. Year 5, 28K. Year 10, 66K. So every 5 years, there's kind of this exponential like curve. I wish I could show it to you all, but at basically year 45 of your career, that's actually over $1 million of cumulative earnings that you could be missing out on just from not asking for that 5K for your first year of your career.
Wow.
That's not chump change.
No, it's not.
So it seems like chump change up front,
mm-hmm.
but over time it is not. And So that's why I try to even, undergrads graduating and, they don't have work experience. They don't have a PhD or anything like that. I try to say, look, 5K, try to get that 5K. I've seen undergrads actually get 30K increases before. And I'm like, like 6 times 5K. So yeah, I think there's a big missed opportunity there for people who don't. And it breaks my heart, knowing I, for example, who didn't have this education, a lot of people didn't negotiate, except for this job and my last job. There's people who have worked for 30 plus years and haven't negotiated.
Well, it's sweet. It shows you care if it breaks your heart. It's just like, oh, that's cute. Well, and I want to start there because you mentioned the undergrad. So you get a person who's fresh out of school, has a degree, talent, let's say in website development, or perhaps they're a software engineer or a data scientist, and they're coming into this and they've never worked in it. Maybe they've interned. How would you help them? Because I want to take it back. We got into negotiations because we like the numbers, but how do you help, someone decide, what company is good for them, what's a good fit, and what's a good first offer?
Great question. So a good first offer is hard to say. It depends on the role. It depends on, the company and years of experience. So I will say, what the usual thing happens is that they do not give you the top of what they can give you. They always have room. People who do have the courage to ask for an increase, if these are just like general rules of thumb, if the company approves it right away, or if they give you everything you asked for, you probably did not ask for high enough. And the thing is that if they do approve it right away, that means there's something in their budget. For example, like if you ask for 200K base, you're making, like they offered 180 and they come back pretty quickly with 190. That doesn't mean that's all they have. It just means that's what what was pre-approved to go up to without having to talk to anybody. And that tends to appease people, right? That's, again, 10K is nothing to sneeze at, right? It's just, the thing is how do you know there's more room? That's what people tend to be like, I have no idea. And how can you tell the offer is good? Yes, there's websites, there's data points, there's, data sets that you can subscribe to online if it's a startup versus big company. But in terms of personal data points, what people tend to do is, oh, this is a lot more than what I'm making currently. And you have to remember that you didn't probably negotiate your current offer. And even if you did, maybe you didn't do it that well because you can't do something expertly without doing it all the time. So you get really good at tying your shoe over the course of a lifetime. It's the same, like that's not the unfortunate things. You can't practice negotiation that frequently. So the point is that the relativity to what you make now isn't always a helpful point of reference. But you can think about it this way. So how can you tell? You want to, when you get an offer, speak with more members of the team. You were being interviewed during the process and you got the job. Now it's your turn to reverse interview the company and to understand and align on role expectations. Because the thing is what if you join a company you end up hating because you didn't ask enough questions before you joined? Mm-hmm. And people tend to say like I met with the manager already during the interview, but that's not enough to really assess fully how much political power and influence that person has within the organization. And taking time to not ask that question explicitly, but rather see what they're willing to do to advocate for you. That is a great proxy to how you'll be treated when you get there to the job. So you want to see, are they willing to meet with you a second time to answer additional questions? Do they make you feel greedy? Are they parsimonious with their time? Do they make you, how do they make you feel when you talk to them or ask them for more guidance? And that's going to be a great sign to see how much they value you. And you want to collect signals at this point. I don't know if you want me to pause here and see if you had any follow-up questions with that.
I do, because it's really interesting. I think that part of, and maybe it is because people are fresh out of school and they have no experience with this. Someone who's already worked and maybe negotiated one deal and is moving a job would probably have a better appreciation for what they have to offer the company. Every negotiation is a win-win if both parties are satisfied. And it's more than just getting a job offer. It's you as an individual are providing a service, a talent, or something that they want to hire you for. So I really like how you are advocating for asking more questions, finding out more about the company, because it is a long, it's a relationship still. And that's where you're going to be spending quite a bit of your waking life doing, which is working. So you want to find yourself in a company or an environment that is going to help you thrive and grow in your career. So I really like how this reframe almost and empowering the people to feel that they have a voice in this process more than just accepting the offer.
Yeah, I also think it's really interesting because we've all done enough interviews to know sometimes they seem odd. Sometimes you feel like you fit right in, and other times something, again, is off. And to use that as your intuition, if it's great, it probably will be great. But if it's not, what is making it bad? And if you were to ask more questions and be able to talk to more people in the company, maybe you would have avoided a big mistake getting into a company that's just not the right fit for you.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's why we call, you're getting your first offer, and then instead of negotiating right away, you should take time and call it the research leverage phase and research the leverage you have. What's my interview feedback? What do you want me to do in this role specifically? What did you like about my background? Are you hiring anybody else this year? Are there any other new grads joining? What is the long-term vision for this role and this team? How can I get to the next level? What does that look like? And you can ask this to your manager. And then you can also ask, these are questions that people don't think that they can ask because it feels explicit, but a lot of the time managers are happy to answer them. And they are, how long can you keep headcount open for me specifically? Because the thing is that if you are a strong candidate, you might have multiple options playing out, but they might not all come in at the same time. Very often they don't. So if you get an offer, your first offer from a company, but you're still waiting for feedback from other companies, there's an opportunity there for you to ask, when do you need this position filled? Basically, when do you need an answer by? Because the recruiter might give you an answer. And the whole thing with negotiations is not get blocked by the recruiter because they have limited influence over the offer changing and they're agents of the company. Mm-hmm. The manager is the only one who can really make any significant changes to your comp on the back end. So you want to know what the true deadline is essentially. And are you considering other candidates for this headcount? And where do I stand amongst those people? And that's when they'll say you're our only person, or they might say, look, we have someone that we're thinking about, so you have to decide by Friday. And those are kind of different responses. And so it doesn't mean you can't negotiate. It just means you can't wait around to negotiate. And then from there, you can ask very explicitly again, can I get your support on the back end when I am negotiating? And what does your support look like? And just see how the manager responds. Because if the manager has kind of a lukewarm response or I have nothing to do with compensation, that is not the best signal, because one, it might maybe they have no idea how to advocate for themselves or for other people, or two, they don't want to. And both are a bit, so if you had a choice, you might want to work with someone who has more experience. But yeah, that's kind of some ways to feel things out before you start negotiating.
So it sounds like the more information you have, the better you're going to be qualified to make the right decision. And it's amazing. It seems so simple just to ask, when are you going to need my response back from, or when are you looking to fill this position? Because you might get a lot of information for them. And sometimes you think you're rushed to make a decision because so many think, oh, they're going to take it back or offer it to somebody else. But if you had more time and more information just by asking a question like that would be so helpful in your whole process. So I'm curious, Nicole, also, you mentioned recruiters, and a lot of our clients have worked with recruiters. And what is your suggestion in terms of when somebody would work with you and a recruiter? Like, who should they be talking to? Do you recommend talking to a recruiter first, and then once they have the job opportunity to work with you, or how does it work?
Yeah, I think there's different, negotiation services out there to have kind of different structures, but the ways ours works is we help as early as the interviewing phase to help with those early questions, like what are your salary expectations? Some states, it's becoming illegal in 21 states to ask what your salary history is, but it's still legal in other places. So how would you deflect that question? So we help early on, and because of our async support structure. But in terms of the heavier lifting does come in when you are expecting an offer, because that's when HR really starts to try to extract information from you, because whoever has most information on the other person tends to win in this type of situation. So you want to make sure that you are showing interest to a degree. I actually, the way I describe negotiation is it's a mixture of three things, like chess, poker, and dating. And I say chess because you want to think about if you do make a move, what could they potentially respond with, and how would you respond to that? And it's like poker because you want to bluff and you don't want to lie. At least we would never lie, but you can bluff, which it is essentially leading them in a direction. So that way they act in a certain way that you want them to act. And then dating, because you want to show enough interest to that so that they keep pursuing you, but you don't want to show so much interest that they know that they have you, and you don't want to show no interest or that like you're just using them to get a competing offer, because then they're not going to do it, right? If you're not interested at all, they're going to stop pursuing you. So it's a delicate balance of those three things, especially like you want to show that you do care and you will add value and that you are passionate and committed to what they have going on, but that, you do have things that you need for yourself too. And I love that, Victor, you shared the win-win, because that it should be an alliance. It should be you get more, I get more. It just should be that type of balance. It shouldn't be a zero sum.
Right. I really do like your chess poker dating
Me
analogy
too.
to it. And I've been on both sides. One as someone who's interviewed for roles in the past, and also in the hiring side, where we're hiring talent. And I always found that on the hiring side that I was always intrigued by those candidates that would ask a lot of questions and ask good questions, and not necessarily making leaps as to why they would be asking the question, but you could tell that they were engaged in the process and taking on in this information. And I loved it because to me it showed a sense of self-worth that said, I need to know this for me to decide whether I want to work with you. I want to work for you. It's one thing that you're giving me a job offer, perhaps, if we get to that, but I also want to, feel you out as a company or as an organization to see if it's one I want to spend some time with.
That's so true. And that I can't help but think of women and a lot of the people that may be listening to this conversation, because I think we do have a tendency to be less confident and really want that job and think maybe we're not worthy of that job. And so I tell every woman that I talk to, I've done mock interviews with high school girls, and I just love telling them those stories. Be confident. You deserve this job just as much as the guy that is interviewing for this position too. So what are some of the things that you will tell women, especially younger, that are just going out to get careers?
Yeah, so I really do love that question. I actually try to start with an analogy, and so they can understand more of what negotiation means versus what they think it means. So really, first, I try to break down their fears, in that there's usually the biggest fear is that they'll lose the offer. That's the first fear. The second fear is that they'll hurt or damage the relationship or look greedy, is the second. So the thing is that in our experience, we've lost very 0.5%, if not less, offers from negotiating. And the one time I've seen it with the several hundred people I've worked with was when we asked to meet with the manager again, and the manager didn't want to and pulled the offer. And it's like, do you really want to work for that person?
Yes.
Exactly.
I mean, no.
Yeah, exactly. You don't. Unfortunately, it was a woman of color in that instance. She felt punished, and she didn't want to negotiate any further. And that was really disappointing to me. And, so she was one of those people that fortunately got scarred from that experience. But the thing is that is a very, very rare occurrence. So I try to share statistics there. And in terms of the looking greedy, then I use this analogy of where, let's say that you are in the market to get a dog or a cat. And let's say that you're going to the SPCA, and you get, the usual fee is $200, right? And then you're looking around and you find the animal you really, really want. And you go up and you're like, okay, I'm ready to move forward. And they're like, you know what? Actually, the animal you've chosen is $100. And you would pause and you'd say, why? And you'd ask, what's wrong with it? Has it been returned? Like, you'd start asking these questions and feeling hesitancy. But what if you get to the counter and they say, you know what, actually, this animal is going to be $300. And they might add, because it's in high demand, there's a long waiting list, it's a rare animal and breed. If you want to walk out with her today, that's what it's going to be. And, if it's something you really want and you value and you buy into their value proposition, you're going to say, okay, yes, I'm going to pay that extra $100. And it's actually going to make that animal look more valuable. So not to compare very like apples to apples, like animals and people, but it's more of just the more you demand and show your value and advocate for yourself, it actually only makes you look more valuable to employers. And if you do it respectfully and like just advocating for yourself, then it just demands respect. If you strong arm and are aggressive and push back and say things that aren't very constructive, then yes, that could damage the relationship, like any relationship, if you're like that.
Thanks, Nicole. I can see where that's coming from because, again, when we used to hire individuals, and even myself, I used to feel that when I interviewed for a job, especially if it was more of a sales-oriented job, I thought if I don't counter, they're not going to think I'm serious or that I'm not a good salesperson, like that I know what it takes to negotiate, that I know to have a sense of confidence in my own self-worth, that I thought it would actually be seen more as a weakness in me in accepting that first offer. It's like, I want people who are going to advocate for themselves and fight. That's at least what I was looking for. And so I always liked it when we would extend an offer to a candidate, and then the candidate would come back. And sometimes they would ask for, either more compensation, or they'd say, hey, is there flexibility in me being able to work from home? Or could I possibly get an extra week off? But the fact that they even came back, and we would sit there, because you were absolutely right. We had a variance that we could work with. So our first offer wasn't the best offer. We had some wiggle room. And I almost appreciated it more when the person came back, because I thought, yeah, you give them a couple more days off, you give them a little more, it's within the variance. I actually respected the fact that they countered. And that was just from my perspective. So hopefully this gives people confidence to be able to negotiate a counter.
No, of course, that's what I would love. It just, again, makes you look more valuable, and it shows, yes, commitment, investment. And the thing is that, people want to look more amiable, right? They want to feel, okay, I don't want to make this difficult. And unfortunately, more women think like that than men. And it's just for some reason conditioning, and, I'm trying to rewire that in any way I can. But, it's something that people don't realize. And it's, again, because kind of like you're never really taught how to do your taxes in high school or college. It's a similar skill that people are they're thrown into the deep end without any prior experience. It's just, it's something that I really hope everyone can learn at some point in their lives, and hopefully earlier. And that's why we host workshops and partner with communities to share to their membership. I love empowering through information.
So we mentioned just flat out compensation being, what you're paid, and perhaps some bonuses and RSUs. What other things do we not negotiate for that we could possibly be getting more of? Victor just mentioned days off, and, I would never think of asking for that.
Yeah. I mean, there's a ton of things you can negotiate for, and I'm not going to list all of this now, but I can maybe share it with you after, and maybe you can share it with your community. It's a PDF called the 75 Things You Can Negotiate. So I would say for big companies, you probably can't negotiate some things like the entire benefit system that they implement for everybody. But, yes, the stock options, equity, the vesting schedule is an example of something that you can't negotiate for a big company, or the vesting cliff, but that's something you certainly can at a smaller company. The performance bonus is something that we've seen change. Signing bonus is a big one, especially if you have more offers or more experience that can be asked for. And people, a lot of the time, it's not even included in the initial offer, and you have to ask for it. It's something that people don't really know exists. Tuition reimbursement, severance. So before you even start, you want to say, okay, I want to negotiate in the event that I am terminated or laid off. I want 3 months severance. And that's something you negotiate for. The title, the level, job responsibilities, what you will and won't do. There's, training, school tuition. And yeah, there's a lot, but yes, flexibility is in there in terms of, your, like what Victor mentioned, there's also start date, remote work, how many hours you work. We had a client actually based in Switzerland, and her offer was based in New York. And the last thing she asked for was, I want 80% work-life balance, because that's just common in Switzerland. They work 32 hours a week. And so that was what she asked for. She's like, I want to work 80% of the time. And they granted it, and they just reflected in the base. They just took a little bit off the base. And so those are things you can ask for. So yeah, the list goes on and on.
Wow. Well, if we can, we'd love to be able to get that list on our show notes. And to help people out. This has been an outstanding conversation, and hopefully people will feel a lot more empowered as they approach, new opportunities and offers, and to feel that sense of confidence that they can counter. Before we end the podcast, Nicole, if people wanted to learn more about you, your organization, your workshops, can you just tell us what would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah. So right now we don't have a place directly on our website. I think that might change. I'll actually pitch this to them, but to sign up for events and future speaking engagements, people can right now connect with me on LinkedIn. I can share additional resources to anyone who wants to reach out to me. I also, if people just want to talk, I would suggest, because of the nature of this work and how I reached out to you originally was through our affiliated organization, 81 Cents, that people go to 81 Cents and share that they heard about us from Tech Girl Financial. And you can get free consultations about your careers that way. So we talk how to negotiate for promotion and career progression, and when you should start looking for a job, or when you should try to actually save the job that you're in now. So we offer free 30-minute discussions. So I would just recommend people to go to our 81cents.com website and request free time there if they want to talk.
Oh, that's awesome. So we will include that link in our show notes. So if you're interested in learning more or talking to Nicole or learning more about how they can help you with this process, I think it's been an invaluable, especially if it leads to that extra, couple of thousand, a paycheck or more. I mean, totally worth the time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this conversation. Very enlightening.
Of course. I loved it.
So again, thank you, Nicole, for joining us. And this has been great.
Yeah, no, I'm happy I was able to do it. It was definitely a fun format.
Oh, that was a great conversation. And I'm hoping for those of you that listen will feel a whole lot more confident when it comes to negotiating your next opportunity.
I'm feeling confident. You better watch out. I might go and get another job.
No, you're not going anywhere. You're too good at what you do. Come on. The benefits here are great.
Anywhere.
We get to work with Nano the Super Dog, so can't complain about that. So we want to thank Nicole once again for joining us on the podcast today and sharing those insights and very valuable keys. Some of the resources that she mentioned on our interview are going to be available on our show notes. I'm really interested in looking at those 75 negotiating things. I mean, 75, I thought like negotiating 3 or 4 good things, but if there's 75, there's a whole laundry list of things that people can be asking for.
Mm-hmm. And that may be very helpful as people transition out of the big tech companies who may be on a hiring freeze for a while to the smaller companies, because I think there's some more things that you can do in smaller companies that you just can't do in the large organizations.
Yeah, and I think we've all been hardwired for quite some time just to think of just the dollar signs, as being in negotiating, like that's exactly what you're getting. But as people discovered in the last couple of years, the flexibility of working from home, work-life balance, taking extra time off, all those things fall into the equation. And so we hope that from listening to what Nicole had to share today, you feel like both confident and empowered in your next opportunity. And we highly encourage, if you know somebody who's in transition or is doing this, share the podcast, because I think this information needs to get out there. And, Nicole has a whole bunch of information that I think could help everybody.
Yes.
Whether you're in tech or any opportunity.
Yes. And once you've negotiated that great job with the great benefits package, be sure that you use all of those benefits responsibly. So if you have any questions on what to do next with that compensation or the RSUs and the benefits that you get, that's where we come in.
That's right. And again, before we end the podcast, we want to remind everybody that we're still working on, and we should get the dates here shortly if they haven't already been released, for our Adulting 101 special financial literacy for families 3-session course that is designed for teens, it's designed for young adults, and for people that are looking for a real strong foundation on what it means to save and invest, what it means to borrow money, what it means to budget and watch that cash flow, and then also what it means to have a good financial plan.
Yes. So definitely something you want to get your foundation started and end up in the plus column instead of the liabilities when you get out in the real world and the numbers get bigger.
Yeah.
And also think about it, great graduation gifts, and we welcome all.
That's right. So be sure to connect with us on some of our social networks if you haven't already, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, or just check out our website. We'll be providing a lot more information in the event section of our website once we have that information up, which will provide specific dates, times, and ways that you can get involved and register, whether you're going to come and join us in person here in Morgan Hill, California, or if you want to join us through Zoom. We will make both options available. It'll be the same content. So we hope that you'll be part of it. And so just stay tuned for more information. So once again, this is Tech Girl Financial. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.
And what will you do when your money works for you?
That's right. What will you do? Thanks.
If you have questions, comments, or suggestions for future shows, please send an email to victor@techgirlfinancial.com or join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag AskTGF. We also encourage you to follow us on the Tech Girl Financial page on Facebook and connect with us on LinkedIn.
Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Tech Girl Financial and Cambridge Investment Research, Inc. are not affiliated companies. Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions.